Hey, everybody, this is Chris
and Cathy.
We wanted to take a minute to thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate every listener and are grateful for this platform.
Please help us share our vision by subscribing to our show through your favorite streaming app. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at PetAbility Podcast.
You can also support the show by making a donation. Simply go to our show notes and click the link at the bottom of the page of any episode. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to PetAbility. I'm your host, Cathy Simons.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston. Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives.
Hey, Chris, what's going on this morning?
What's up, Cathy?
Listen, I have so much to tell you today. So many things. Did I tell you I went to the Pug Social last weekend?
I knew you were going to the Pug Social.
For people who don't have pugs for people who don't have pugs, typically in most states, they have this social every year, and it's the big fundraiser for whatever, pug rescue organization is in that state. And it is off the hook. It's like nothing you've ever seen before. 200 pugs in costumes, a pug parade, best wrinkle contest, curliest tail contest. But the biggest news of all, and I wish I was able to call you at the time. They have pug races. They'll have the males races and then they'll have the female races. The dog that won the male races was a 3-legged pug named Winston, and he blew the competition out of the water.
I know why he won despite his 3 legs.
What's that?
Because his name is Winston. He's destined to win.
It was the greatest of all accomplishments. He got a medal. He wore it around the social. He was very pleased with himself. So it was so exciting to see that he was out there competing in the pug race of 2022. And now he is a champion,
That on 3 legs. Here.
Yeah.
Here.
It was a lot of fun. The other thing is, I would like to let the audience know that Chris and I were having a little conversation that turned into a debate the other day, talking about ramps versus stairs. And what I found out about my dear friend Chris of 20 years is that she's an anti-ramper.
No, say it isn't so.
He's an anti-ramper.
It's true.
And, just when you think you know a person, you find out something like this, that she's an anti-ramper. And then we decided, let's talk this out on the air, because this is something that I think the audience needs to know. Ramps versus stairs. Get this question all the time. What's better for my dog? Shall I use the ramp, or shall I get some stairs to get into the car, to get onto the furniture? So not usually talking about stairs versus ramps in the home. So not that repetitive all day up and down, mostly about getting on stationary items like the couch or the human's bed or in and out of the car. So I think it warrants a conversation.
I do too. But before we get into that, shall we mention our new sponsor?
Yes, please. Because one of my, because I'm obviously going to take the pro ramp stance, and one of my pro ramp stance items is that you can use Dr. Busby's toe grips with your ramp. And
well, Cathy, you can use Dr. Busby's toe grips on your stairs.
There's no scenario where you can't use your Dr. Busby's toe grips.
That's right. So we are thrilled that Dr. Busby's is on board as one of our sponsors. And, just to briefly describe, it's rubber, medical grade rubber rings that slip onto your pet's toenails.
When those rubber rings make contact with the ground, it provides instant traction. It will improve the dog's mobility, and it will help prevent those painful, scary falls. So there are 2 ways that you can help support the show by purchasing Dr. Busby's toe grips. 1, go to our show notes and click the link. It will take you where you need to go. The proceeds from that purchase will go to PetAbility Podcasts, and they'll help to support our show. And the second way is you can go to toegrips.com. You can use the promo code PETPOD22. That's PETPOD22, all capital letters. Use that promo code at checkout, and you'll get a 10% discount on your first order, and proceeds will go to help our show.
even though you and I are fans of the toe grips, because that's what we're most familiar, she's actually rebranded and is now really targeting senior pets and all the things that we can do to help our gray muzzled friends. We love them. Cathy and I have used this product for years.
Right. And visit that website. You'll gain so much information.
All right. So let's get on with it. Who's going first?
Why don't
I've
you
never
go
been in a
first?
formal debate.
I
don't how
know.
this
So why
works.
don't you go first, since you're,
I knew
and
you
I'm
were
not
going to
saying
say that.
I'm not saying I'm anti-stare, but I'm going to take the pro ramp stance. Okay.
Yes,
And you're going to take the pro stare stance. So why don't you tell me what you think stairs are so great, Chris? And again, remember, for this conversation, we're talking about like stairs and ramps for getting on stationary items, not this like 35 stairs to get in and upstairs,
Well, I can take the program stance, Cathy, but as I'm thinking about it, I would need to talk about ramps in a negative light in order to paint the stairs in a positive light, kind of a compare and contrast. You ready? You ready for that?
I'm ready.
All right. So, yes, I was on the ramp bandwagon when I started out in my pet career about 20 years ago. Thought this is what we needed to do to help our pets get onto stationary objects. Tried many a ramp. These are the features that I suggested. So, in terms of specs of the ramp, right? So, first of all, there are two types of ramps. There's a ramp that folds in the middle, and there's a ramp that telescopes or slides in and out. And so that's kind of a personal preference. But realize that realize that the ramp that folds is a fixed length. So you don't have any choice on that. Where the telescoping one, you can make it shorter, which then would make it steeper potentially, depending, if you're on the same object. If you are able to telescope it all the way out and lengthen it, then it's a more gradual incline, less steep. So it does give you some flexibility there, which is nice if you are using the ramp primarily for the car, because you don't know how close you're going to be to the car next to you, how much space you're going to have. But in your home, you pretty much have a good idea. And again, talking about length and space, we don't have a lot of space in our homes typically. And even if we do, we don't want a ramp sticking way out into the room, that could be a hazard for a person to trip on and so forth. So oftentimes we're limited by furniture or walls or what have you. And ramps, especially for a big dog, take up a lot of space. Secondly, we just mentioned grip. So the surface of the ramp has to be grippy. It has to be well tractioned. If it's still at that steep incline, even if you have carpet or indoor, outdoor, like that fake grass or texturized like sandpaper, they can still slip if it's a steep angle, right? That's tough, especially for our dogs that are differently abled. I also recommended that they have sides on the ramp. So many times as dogs get older, they have a wide base of support. So they are more prone to maybe stepping off the side of the ramp if it's a narrow ramp, right? So you want a little lip there that could catch their paw as they're potentially sliding out to the side. And let's see, finally, really, I think ramps are best for small dogs, for the littles. I have always found that the larger dogs have more of an issue with ramps. Ramps are foreign to dogs. When have they gone up a steeply pitched ramp like that? In America, our American Disabilities Act has specific specifications that for every foot of length, there is only 1 inch of rise. That's a very shallow pitch. So in our communities, that's typically what we and our pets are dealing with. But imagine again that maybe 30-degree angle. That's scary. There's lack of familiarity. So that's also an issue that I have with ramps. It takes a lot of training by the owner. And are the owners willing to invest that time? Because I found that oftentimes it's rather emergent. Owners wait till the last minute. maybe put our pet out and, and go that, now I need to get a ramp and whatever. And so they put it off. And then now their dog really needs it. Right. And that's the worst time to engage in training, because training to use the ramp takes time. You need to be patient. If that ramp moves, wobbles, shakes, or makes any noise, forget it. They're out of there. So that's why I'm an anti-ramper. Yes, I don't like labels. I don't like to be put in a box. I mean, there's a time and a place for everything. But those are my considerations and the issues that I had with ramps. So it's not that I didn't try them. It was based on real life experiences. And, I feel now that I should turn the floor over to you. I think, ding, ding, I've exceeded my time limit and it's your turn. And then I will go back and tell you why I like steps.
Okay. So, I've done the same thing. We've all had the same experience where we've had to have, owners either use stairs or ramps to help them. And largely it's either because of the dog's limitation or the owner's limitation in being able to help the dog in and out of the car. And so I do the same thing, ramps or stairs for these dogs. And I'm not anti-stair. I'm okay with stairs. I think it's, I think that you're right. Dogs have gone upstairs, probably since they were puppies. So they understand that. And there is a little bit of a learning curve for the learning the ramp. But I find that it's, for some of my patients, the ramp is, when they're coming down, less impact. So if I have animals that have front end issues, when they come off that last step, it's concussive, and so I like to see them come off the ramp sort of nice and smooth like that. So I find it, less impact, at least on the down, there's less impact. So I like that for animals that have shoulder issues, neck issues, elbow issues, things like that. So that impact is one of my key factors in deciding whether I want to use a ramp or not. I think it might be for some animals, and for some animals, I think that it might be less fatiguing and more comfortable. So some dogs that have hip dysplasia or arthritis, they might find that stair climbing, even though it's just a few stairs, they may find that a difficult task because they don't have maybe the coordination or the strength or the balance to get those couple of steps. So I find it maybe less fatiguing, but certainly for dogs that have conditions like hip dysplasia, maybe a little bit more comfortable in that movement versus trying to get up the stairs or hopping up those couple of stairs. The ramps are adjustable. I mean, not the one that folds out, but the telescoping one is adjustable. I find that stairs that you get have little versatility. You have to find out exactly how high you need to make it, and it has to be that height. Where with the ramp that's a telescoping one, it has a little bit more, forgiving space. You can roll it out a little bit more, or you can bring it up a little bit more. And then I find that sometimes owners still have to help their dogs with that couple of stairs. Now, sometimes they have their help them up harness on, or they're gingerly and they still need to help them up. I find that, owners that have their own limitations, I think that ramps might be a little bit easier for them. I oftentimes just see them hold onto the dog's leash, and if the dog's trained to go up the ramp, or right up the ramp and into the car. And there really isn't very much owner involvement in assisting the dog. And then, Chris, you mentioned for short-legged dogs. So, and this is a feat of athleticism that I'm always amazed with. Like, how do dachshunds climb stairs? The height of a stair is most often longer than their leg length. So it is a huge feat of athleticism for little dogs, particularly our chondrodystrophic dogs, even to have a few stairs, because of the depth of the stair is longer than their tiny little leg. So it's a lot of expending of energy to thrust yourself up with your little tiny legs and then balance yourself with your little tiny legs on the way down. So I worry about those little guys. And so for those guys, I think that that ramps, especially in the house, to furniture, or how dachshunds like to get in your bed and get under your blanket, to get up the little ramp and into your bed and under that blanket. So I think those are my pro ramp stances.
Cathy.
Oh, and you can use toe grips and help them up harness and ginger lead.
And help them up that you mentioned.
I love my help them up harness. I love it.
So you raise good points. I think that when your dog is, or pet, let's talk about cats too.
Right.
We often neglect the fact that many of our cats as they age have arthritis, and they hide it so well.
Right.
And cats are natural jumpers, but when you see them start to miss that jump, or no longer get on the bed and curl up like they used to, maybe it's not comfortable. They're spending more time on the floor. So we want to help them get to their happy place. I think that stairs or ramps in those cases for the smaller short-legged dogs can be equally effective.
Right.
Where I've had more success with stairs is with larger dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I've had many, let's say 40, 50 pound plus, where again, it becomes more of an issue for the owner, right? They can't get the dog in the car, for example, but they'll circumvent the ramp. I had somebody who's a great trainer. They've actually been a guest on our show. Recommended, well, I didn't actually. They got a ramp and then reached out to me and said, Beacon won't use the ramp. She just jumps right over it. And so if they're capable, they can avoid and jump around it, because I think it is, again, kind of scary and unfamiliar. And you talked about the step rise, and that's actually one of the things that I like about stairs. Now, there are many products out there, and I'm going to talk about DIY and things you can use in your house and things you can buy. But according to building code, all steps are supposed to be 7 inches high. So have you ever been like to an old house or building or something? And even though the step maybe is lower, maybe it's only 5 or 6 inches, you find yourself tripping.
Right.
Because it's not that motor learning that you've had your entire life is now different. I mean, you have to do something different, even though it should be easier because you haven't had to step up as high. So physically you think, oh yeah, shorter step, easier, but it's actually harder because physically our motor learning is all messed up with that.
We've been conditioned.
We've been
muscle memory to have that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
what about your patients who have trouble with that type of movement with the stairs? So your German Shepherd with your bilateral hip dysplasia that's going to want to bunny hop up those stairs. How do you deal with that?
Well, again, I think over time, because hip dysplasia is an insidious, they've had the dysplasia, right. It's an anatomical thing congenitally since they were born. So those dogs have figured out a compensatory way of moving, and they're using both legs because that's more comfortable and where they may get the most power. So I still stand by, this is what they've learned. This is their motor learning. And again, Cathy, I think both you and I would say your dog has severe bilateral hip dysplasia. Limit stairs, block off those flights of stairs in your home. Shut the door to the basement. Don't let them follow you down to do your laundry, things like that. So from a rehab perspective, of course, we want to, limit that impact. We want to always preaching safety, right? If they were to stumble or fall. But for those times, again, like getting into the car or getting on your bed because they've slept in your bed since they were a puppy. And now, you've noticed that they try to jump and they either give up or they slam into the side of the bed. How can we help them? And for that German Shepherd, that may just be one step. It may be something, a platform that you put by your bed. When it's not in use, you can slide it under your bed. But now it's bedtime. So, you call Sergeant over, you pull out the platform and boom, boom, up into the bed they go.
Right.
So, steps can take a wide variety of configurations. And oftentimes, if this is something that's come about, kind of later in life, I'll just tell people, again, with their large dog, let's look around your house and see what we can find that could act as that step. I have one client that is using a toolbox that they put a like a yoga mat on for grip.
Yep.
And they take it out of their trunk. They put it, by their back door, and the dog, who happens to be a German Shepherd, hops on the toolbox because it's nice and heavy, and then into the car.
Yeah. I will actually also, going back to my pro ramp stance, I actually find it helpful sometimes as an exercise. sometimes I'll have them incline that ramp, maybe not necessarily do it a steep angle like up against the car, but maybe we do that, lean it up against something at the porch at home or something. And I use it as an uphill or downhill exercise. So it can actually be used or incorporated as a piece of a therapy equipment for types of recovery. So, when we start doing incline work for some of these dogs that have whatever, remember they're doing incline work because they're recovering from hip or knee surgery.
Yes.
You can use that piece of equipment as a therapy tool. But, you addressed that making it move or making a noise. And I agree with that, because if it moves or makes a noise, and they may not want to get back on it again. What I do is I'll just take something and put it under the ramp that fits. So like a box, just underneath the middle part of the ramp, so that when the dog goes up and hits that middle part of the ramp, it doesn't bow or move or wiggle. So I've stabilized it from underneath, particularly when I'm doing it for an exercise. I can't necessarily make it not make a noise. I'm not sure I can make stairs not make a noise sometimes when you're outside either, but I think the movement is probably more scary in my mind than necessarily the noise.
Right.
Maybe we can get over the noise aversion, but the instability of something, the ramp or the stairs, is scary because you could fall, right? If you're going to go over a bridge and it starts swaying, you're like, I am out.
Right.
This is not safe. This is not safe. And I think it's the same for dogs.
And to make it more stable and less noisy in either case, and I agree with you that it could be ramps or stairs, even putting a rug under so that that object, doesn't slip.
Yep.
That it, doesn't make noise as it might teeter, an eighth of an inch. And, if it's on a hardwood floor or tile or something like that, could make a noise. And gives it some stability because you have some forgiveness, on a softer surface. So, something like a rug, again, it could be a yoga mat. It could be, anti-fatigue mat. It could be, anything.
Yeah.
But, as always, you have to make sure that whatever you place the ramp or the stairs on also doesn't slip.
Also doesn't move, right?
Right.
Yeah, because that could be scary too. And then I go back to cats. I think that cats would use the ramps in your home as well. They're smart. They're smart animals. And like you said, they hide everything. And I know that they love to jump, but they also know that they have limitation to jump if they have pain. And so I think that they would be willing to use ramps. And I think that there are all kinds of new environmental enrichment things. What I was watching the Today Show on Saturday or Sunday morning, and they were interviewing Steve-O. Do you know who Steve-O is?
No.
You know Steve-O? He's the guy from the Jackass movies. And I don't know.
That's the reason I do not know Steve.
Yeah. Well, I'm not no offense. No offense.
What's this say about you, Cathy?
No offense, Steve-O. I'm not really that familiar with them either. But the reason I stopped to listen to him is because in the background of his interview, he had all these cat shelves behind him and this great cat tree and little ramps, and they had little dips. And I was thinking, that's the story. Steve-O loves cats. And he's got all this environmental enrichment behind him. These little ramps, these little shelves, this great cat tree. I stopped to listen
they like
to
to be up high.
Right. And I listened to the whole interview because I was like, I'm fascinated. But I think they're willing to do that sort of thing, ramps and shelves and stuff like that to get themselves where they want to be. They want to be up higher. And so therefore, if they have a ramp to get themselves up higher, I think they would use it.
True. But I still stand by that the step may be more familiar. And I think again, a smaller animal, whether it's a dog or a cat, is going to be more likely to use a ramp and or stairs.
Yeah.
I have an example in my own life. My mom had a 18-year-old cat she was in kidney failure, very weak.
Yeah.
And wanted to be up, lying with my mom, whether it was on the bed or on the sofa.
Right.
And when I was there this summer, I said, Mom, let's make a step. And Mom's like, what are you talking about? So I go down in the basement. I found a, pretty sturdy box. Again, the cat only weighed, like 7 pounds. And I covered it with a towel, like a thick, towel, wrapped it, secured it, put it next to the couch. And again, it was just a segue, from the floor to that step to the couch. And Mittens used it
That's
instantly.
all she needed was that one little,
Instantly. And it didn't take up a lot of room because I was,
Right.
again, worried that my
Right.
mom might, trip on it. We put it at the opposite end to where my mom usually sits.
Mhm.
And, quick, easy solution. You
Mhm.
didn't have to build anything. You didn't have to, order something online. So again, when I say steps, oftentimes it's
Or
just
a
one
step.
step.
A
Or-
step, right?
Yeah, or a platform that's necessary.
Right. Right.
So having said that, I find that ramps are often heavy, cumbersome, and dangerous. Not only dangerous for our pets that may, fall off, but I can't tell you how many times my fingers have gotten pinched in a telescoping ramp or, when that folding ramp folds. So
Yeah.
that's not good.
That's the worst. Yeah, that's the worst. That's the worst. I was watching a little video this morning on Instagram of this little dog that I follow called, her name is Dottie the Dwarf. So if you're on Instagram, you got to follow Dottie the Dwarf. And she was practicing her little ramp this morning, and it was homemade, and she's teeny tiny, and she just needs that one little help to get down the stair from her in the house to outside. And she's just the cutest little thing, but she is really squatty and short and has these little dwarf legs. And she was practicing, and what the owner had done was made little rises, little raised areas. So as she came down, she wouldn't slide down the ramp. It's almost like a little step.
I call that a slat. I'll tell
slat.
people
A little
to put
slat,
a
right.
slat across the ramp so that,
Right.
yes, they don't slide down the
They
whole
don't
pitch.
slide down the whole ramp. So it was great because this was a homemade ramp. So it was perfect to her size, to the step, and the steepness was not that bad. He made it go out longer so that she could have that ability to go up without having to fight and claw to get up the ramp. So
Cathy, I agree with you. Again, animals with a low center of gravity, short legs may do better with a ramp. I will concede on that. But I did want to go back because I mentioned it earlier, and I think this is true for both ramps and stairs. Thinking about, how you get them, make them, acquire them, etc. So, I've already touched on using common household objects. Storage containers are great. You can go to the container store and buy, various size containers, flip them over, cover them with something grippy. Again, the grip is always important. I mentioned the toolbox, an aerobic step, et cetera, et cetera. Years ago, I saw a way to make steps online using that foam insulation board. So you go to like your big box store, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. And I think it's a 4x8 sheet. So then you always have like your division of 2, right? And you cut it in half, you cut it in half again, you cut it in half. So, and then you tape or glue that. And so your lowest step is maybe 2 or 4 inches. And then back from that is 6 inches or 8 inches and so on and so forth. So it's really lightweight.
Yeah.
And you can make stairs yourself. I mentioned, the use of cardboard boxes and so forth. But let's think about those materials, right? So again, purchasing or making. Wood is going to be your most stable in terms of stairs, but there's a potential noise factor and the lack of grip on the surface. So those modifications need to be made. There's a lot of foam stairs out there. Again, not stable if your dog has any weight. If they get off to the side, that's a huge balance issue, right? So again, if it's a lightweight, dog or cat, and they're going to pretty much stick to the middle, the advantage of those is that they typically have good traction because they're made of like material and they can grip and dig their claws, into that foam in the cover. But if balance is an issue, don't use foam stairs. Cardboard is great because it's lightweight, but again, less durable over time, especially for a heavier pet.
Right.
And I personally like plastic because it's lightweight, tends to be stable. But again, you have that noise factor and the grip on top. So those are, just some considerations that I want people to think of when they're thinking about making or purchasing stairs.
I like the aerobic step for a couple of reasons. One, it's perfect to just throw in the car, right? But also most of those aerobic steps, there's feet on the bottom, and you can make that aerobic step just a little bit taller or flip the feet over and make it a little bit shorter. So there is a little bit of versatility in the in the aerobic step. You can make it a little higher or maybe a little lower.
Exactly.
So that's one of my favorites.
A wider step.
Right. And then I just put something over it,
for a bigger dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to think about, you alluded to this earlier, what is your ultimate height? Because if you buy something online and it's steps that go up, maybe 2.5 feet or something, like 30-inch step, and your bed is higher than that,
right,
then, that's a big thing, to get on and off the bed. So you have to make sure the height is appropriate. Again, the depth of the step is appropriate, because the narrower the depth of the step, the steeper the incline typically. And again, how wide is your dog's base of support? Is the width? So look at all of those specs and make sure, again, the width is wide enough to accommodate your dog's gait.
Right. And I think that you can probably do a similar thing with ramps. If you're handy, you could probably make some ramps like little Dottie the dwarf did. But for the most part, they do just come in the folding, which is one size. It's big, it's bulky, but if it's the right size from your SUV to the ground, that's great. The telescoping one has a little bit more versatility to it, and you can make your own ramp if you so desired. I would probably use wood material. I would absolutely use the slats. I would probably use those carpet treads that you get. You stick to your stairs so that you don't slide. I don't know what they're called, but they have a little grit to them to give them a little bit of texture.
I think they are just called stair treads.
Oh, maybe stair treads. Stair treads. And then again, the angle of it is so important. So, if you think about your senior dog with mobility issues, they're not going to be able to do that steeper slope. So they're going to need a gentler slope. So if you have a senior dog that needs to get into a vehicle of 24 inches, then the approximate, length of that is probably going to be, and I'm just estimating here, like maybe 6 feet, because it's going to give them a gentle, easier angle to get into. And that becomes a little problematic because now you've made a ramp that's 6 feet long that you have to get into your car. But it's probably really good for the home, getting on the furniture maybe, or better than in the car. But we want less of an angle for those dogs with problems.
Speaking of the car, I've always had difficulty with ramps going to the back seat, because typically those where the doors are, it's curved and that ramp will not sit square. Right. Whereas again, you can put a step right up to the edge of your car door, and and then their last hop is either into the footwell or typically onto the seat. So they could take 1 or 2 steps to get to that point, and then the final step is up onto the seat where they ride. And again, in terms of space, both stairs and ramps can be folded down oftentimes and hidden if you have guests coming over, or storage or space is an issue. They can be stored away.
Weight could be an issue too. Like if you can't move that, if you can't lift up that folding ramp, then it's probably not the piece of equipment for you, because it is heavy. It is heavy. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we've come to a consensus. I think there are situations that may demand a step or a ramp, meaning maybe you have both for the same dog.
Right.
Or the individual dog does better with ramps than they do stairs, or vice versa. So, I think the bottom line, Cathy, is to look at your pet, your situation, where do they need to go, and what's the best way to get them there. And then also consider yourself, like you said, what are you as the owner capable of? Can you help support them? Can you guide them? Can you steady them? How much lifting can you do? Can you pop their rear end up, on that last step if needed? All those kinds of things. What's your balance issue like? But the bottom line is both need to be basically noiseless, have great grip, and not wobble. They need to be safe and stable. So both, those are the same features for both a stair or a ramp.
Right. I think we can both agree here, Chris, right?
We can remain friends.
We can remain friends now. That it's pet dependent. What's going on with your pet? Do they prefer, are they more inclined to do steps versus ramp, or ramp versus steps? It's situation dependent. Do they need to get in and out of the car? Or do they need to get up on your high bed? Or do they, want to get up on their favorite piece of furniture? So it's situation dependent. And I think you're right. You could probably have steps and ramps in your house
Yes.
for all kinds of different situations. But I think we gave the audience a lot to think about, though, what one versus the other and what are their needs and which item is going to fit their specific needs. So
well said. All right, Cathy.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at PetAbility Podcast.
For more information about Cathy's books and living with blind dogs, please visit enableyourpet.com. Thank you, and please tune in next time.